Betty, Valve, How Half-Life Creators Built the Steam Empire. In 1996, Gabe Newell was sitting pretty at Microsoft, 13 years deep into what most would consider a dream tech career. He'd helped build Windows, watched the company explode into a global behemoth, and accumulated enough Microsoft stock to never work another day in his life. But instead of cruising toward retirement, Newell made a decision that would reshape the entire gaming industry. He walked away from his Microsoft salary to chase a crazy idea about making video games. This wasn't just another tech executive having a midlife crisis. This was the beginning of Valve Corporation, a company that would accidentally stumble into building one of the most powerful digital empires in history. What started as a simple desire to create better video games would eventually evolve into Steam, the platform that would come to control over 70% of the PC gaming market and generate billions in revenue. The journey from Microsoft dropout to gaming emperor is a masterclass in how passion projects can morph into business empires when you're not even trying. Newell's departure from Microsoft wasn't born from corporate frustration or entrepreneurial ambition, it was pure creative hunger. He'd been watching the gaming industry explode throughout the mid 90s, particularly fascinated by ID Software's groundbreaking work on Doom and Quake. These weren't just games to Newell, they were glimpses into the future of interactive entertainment. The technology was advancing rapidly, 3D graphics were becoming mainstream, and multiplayer gaming was starting to show real promise. Newell convinced fellow Microsoft veteran Mike Harrington to join his venture, and together they founded Valve in August 1996 in Kirkland, Washington. The name Valve was chosen because they wanted to control the flow of creativity and innovation in gaming, much like a valve controls the flow of liquid. Their initial funding came entirely from their own Microsoft wealth, giving them complete creative freedom without the pressure of outside investors. The company's first hire was a team of modders and level designers who had been creating custom content for Quake, signaling from day one that Valve valued creativity and community involvement over traditional gaming industry experience. The early days of Valve were characterized by an almost academic approach to game development. Rather than rushing to market with a quick product, Newell and his team spent months studying what made games compelling, analyzing everything from level design psychology to weapon mechanics. They licensed the Quake engine from ID Software, but quickly realized they'd need to heavily modify it to achieve their vision. What they were creating wasn't just another first-person shooter. It was an immersive narrative experience that would blur the lines between gameplay and storytelling. The game they were developing, initially code-named Prospero, would eventually become Half-Life, but the journey to completion was anything but smooth. The team grew from their initial handful of employees to over 60 people by 1998. Burning through millions of dollars of Newell's personal fortune, they scrapped and rebuilt entire sections of the game multiple times, driven by a perfectionist mentality that would become Valve's trademark. The company culture was deliberately flat, with no traditional hierarchy, allowing anyone to contribute ideas regardless of their official title. When Half-Life finally launched in November 1998, it didn't just meet expectations, it obliterated them. The game sold over 200,000 copies in its first 2 weeks, and went on to sell over 9 million copies worldwide, generating over $200 million in revenue. But more importantly, Half-Life revolutionized how stories could be told in video games. Instead of relying on cutscenes or text dumps, the entire narrative unfolded through gameplay, with players experiencing the story through the eyes of Gordon Freeman, a theoretical physicist fighting his way out of the Black Mesa research facility after an experiment goes catastrophically wrong. The game won over 50 Game of the Year awards and established Valve as a major force in the gaming industry overnight. Critics praised its seamless blend of action, puzzle solving, and atmospheric storytelling, with many declaring it the best PC game ever made at the time. The success gave Valve the financial foundation and industry credibility they'd need for their next phase of growth, but it also created an unexpected problem. How do you follow up perfection? The answer came in the form of Half-Life's modding community. Within months of the game's release, thousands of players were creating custom levels, total conversions, and entirely new game modes using Valve's development tools. Newell watched this explosion of creativity with fascination, recognizing that the most innovative gaming experiences weren't necessarily coming from big studios, they were coming from passionate communities. Two mods in particular caught Valve's attention.
Counter-Strike, a tactical multiplayer shooter created by Minlay and Jess Cliff, and Team Fortress Classic, developed by Robin Walker. Instead of simply licensing these mods or trying to compete with them, Valve hired their creators and acquired the rights to their games. This wasn't standard industry practice at the time. Most publishers viewed mods as potential competition or copyright infringement, but Newell saw them as the future of game development, a way to tap into unlimited creative potential while building closer relationships with their player community. Counter Strike would go on to become one of the most popular online games in history, with over 25 million registered players by 2008. But Valve's real empire building moment came from solving a problem they hadn't intended to create. By the early 2000s, the company was simultaneously developing Half-Life 2, managing Counter Strike's massive online community, and dealing with rampant piracy of their games. Traditional game distribution meant working through publishers who took significant cuts of revenue, controlled marketing decisions, and often rushed development schedules. Retail distribution was even worse, with physical stores taking up to 50% of a game's selling price while offering no relationship with actual players. Newell began envisioning a different model. What if Valve could distribute games directly to players' computers, cutting out middlemen while providing better service and automatic updates? The concept wasn't entirely new. Digital distribution existed in primitive forms, but nobody had created a comprehensive platform that could handle everything from purchasing to installing to multiplayer matchmaking. In 2002, Valve began developing what would become Steam, initially intended as a way to update Counter-Strike and distribute Half-Life 2. Steam's launch in September 2003 was, to put it mildly, a disaster. The platform was buggy, slow, and deeply unpopular with gamers who just wanted to play their games without dealing with additional software. When Half-Life 2 launched in November 2004, requiring Steam activation, the backlash was swift and brutal. Forums exploded with complaints about forced online activation, server crashes, and the general principle of requiring internet connectivity for single-player games. Many industry observers predicted Steam would be abandoned within a year, dismissed as an example of a successful game developer overreaching into unfamiliar territory, but Newell had learned valuable lessons from Half-Life's development about the importance of persistence and iteration. Instead of retreating, Valve doubled down on Steam, using their Half-Life 2 revenue to fund massive improvements to the platform's infrastructure and user experience. They hired network engineers, expanded server capacity, and most importantly, began listening carefully to user feedback. Within 18 months, Steam had transformed from a frustrating necessity into a genuinely useful service.
The breakthrough came when Valve realized Steam's potential extended far beyond distributing their own games. In 2005, they began signing deals with other developers and publishers, offering Steam as a distribution platform for third-party games. The value proposition was compelling. Developers could reach Steam's growing user base directly, keep larger percentages of revenue compared to retail distribution, and receive detailed analytics about player behavior. Valve's revenue model was elegant in its simplicity. They took a 30% cut of all sales while handling payment processing, digital rights management, automatic updates, and customer service. Their first major third-party partner was ID Software, the same company whose Quake engine had powered Half-Life. By 2007, Steam hosted over 300 games from dozens of publishers, and the platform's user base had grown to over 13 million registered accounts. The network effect was becoming undeniable. More games attracted more players, which attracted more developers, which led to more games. What truly built Valve's empire was their understanding that Steam wasn't just a store, it was a social platform, a development toolkit, and a gaming ecosystem all rolled into one. They introduced features like user reviews, friend lists, achievement systems, and cloud save synchronization, turning game purchasing into a social experience. The Steam Workshop allowed players to create and share mods directly through the platform, while Steam Greenlight gave indie developers a path to publication that bypassed traditional publisher gatekeepers. Valve's own games continued to drive platform adoption. Team Fortress 2, released in 2007 as part of the Orange Box collection, became a cultural phenomenon and demonstrated the power of games as a service models. By 2008, Steam was processing over $1 billion in annual revenue, with Valve taking their 30% cut on every transaction. The company that started with 13 Microsoft refugees had become the dominant force in PC gaming distribution, controlling access to over 150 million registered users by 2010. The empire Valve built was fundamentally different from traditional business models. They owned no retail stores, maintained no physical inventory, and employed fewer than 300 people while generating revenue comparable to companies 10 times their size. Steam's digital marketplace operated with gross margins exceeding 70%, since distributing games digitally cost almost nothing once the infrastructure was built. Valve's flat organizational structure, which had seemed like a quirky startup experiment in 1996, proved perfectly suited to managing a platform business that required constant adaptation and innovation. By 2010, estimates placed Valve's private company valuation at over $2 billion, with Gabe Newell's personal net worth exceeding $1 billion. But perhaps most remarkably, they had achieved this dominance while maintaining their original culture of creative experimentation and community focus. The company that accidentally built a digital empire while trying to make better video games had proven that sometimes the most powerful business models emerge not from strategic planning, but from genuine passion for solving interesting problems. Steam's success would inspire countless imitators, but Valve's first mover advantage and relentless focus on user experience had built moats that would prove nearly impossible to cross.